Hey, buckle up. Investors are fleeing from electronically traded funds, ETFs, exchange-traded funds, excuse me, and 77% of all new business loans that were secured by real estate are interest-only loans. This is exactly what we saw in 2007. Get ready. Check it out. Leave your comments and ding the bell, and be sure to subscribe to our channel. I want to talk about the economy. We've been talking about Donald Trump being a grifter. I have been saying for, geez, I think about a year now, that I think that he's actually broke. I think he's been broke since the 90s. I think he's been living off cash flow and borrowed money. He goes to Deutsche Bank and borrows $400 million. And then when they say pay it back, he sues them. And then they say, okay, you don't have to pay it back. By the way, here's another billion. And, you know, if you're living, he's living large, right? But how much does it cost to live large for him and his family, you know, the whole Trump crime family? There's like, what, 5, 6, 8 of them, where they include the little kids and all this kind of stuff. You know, you can live large on a couple $1 million a year. You can live real large on $3 or $4 million a year. You can live super large on $10 million a year, even an entire family like that. I mean, you know, if you're going to spend $1 million a year, that's, you know, in the neighborhood of $80,000 a month, if I'm doing my math right. And, you know, $80,000 a month is in the neighborhood of $20,000 a week. And for $20,000 a week, you can get a lot, right? So I'm of the opinion that Donald Trump has always been a grifter. He was stealing money from his father's estate. His father was giving him some, and he was also stealing some, or at least, you know, some of the reaction or some of the interactions were rather dicey. His sister was apparently collaborating with him in this because, as a federal judge, she just resigned a couple of weeks ago to avoid being investigated after the New York Times laid out how this illegal tax fraud scheme worked, where Trump was taking money from his father's estate, hundreds of millions of dollars, and delivering it into his own pockets and those of his siblings in ways that were in open and naked violation of the U.S. tax code. But now we've got another situation here. Donald Trump is, you know, promoting this. The economy's just wonderful. Everything's great. Right. We've actually seen the workforce over the last 4 months, the workforce participation rate, the number of people who are actually working as a percentage of the population, has been declining. Now, there's a number of possible reasons for this. One is that a lot of these people are losing full-time jobs and they're getting gig jobs, so they're still considered working in some numbers, but not in others. You know, they're working at Uber. Uber's went on strike today, by the way, you know, as a way of demanding basically recognition as workers, decent pay, some transparency, all this kind of stuff. So, number one, you've got that. Number two, you'll recall one of the big things that really drove us into the crash of 2008, the last, you know, the Bush crash, in addition to Bush's tax cuts, but and in large part as a consequence of the year 2000, or maybe it was 99, repeal of Glass-Steagall. Excuse me. One of the things that really drove this was that lenders, on the assumption that the price of real estate would always go up, lenders started loaning people money, particularly businesses, but also, you know, real estate, residential real estate, started loaning people money on a interest-only basis. In other words, somebody wants to buy a house for $200 grand, say, and they can't afford the payments, the monthly payments on a $200,000 mortgage, but they could afford the interest part of that payment. Typically, the interest is like, you know, 10, 15% of the total payment. Well, it depends on where you are in the life of the loan. Obviously, it's like 90% early on, and it's like 10% on the back end. But in any case, they were doing interest-only loans. And, you know, why would a lender do an interest-only loan? Because the whole point of lending is to eventually get paid back the principal. The reason that they would do this is they assume that the price of the property is going to continuously go up forever. And as a result of that, you know, eventually the added equity will be there, and the person who bought the house will sell it or flip it or whatever, or refinance their loan in a way that allows them to pay back the principal. But this is a really dangerous thing when you start seeing the majority of the loans being made being interest-only loans. It means you are in what Hyman Minsky referred to as the Ponzi phase, the third phase of an economy, the phase just before the collapse. So consider this. In the first 3 months of this year, and I got this from Chuck Miller's newsletter this morning from Aiden Forecast, in the first 3 months of this year, 77% of all new loans for commercial real estate were interest-only loans. Trump's managed, and then this is what I wrote this morning for our Facebook meme, as it were, or, a little quote. Trump's management of the economy has been similar to the way a cocaine addict keeps on functioning. Periodic jolts, in this case it's tax cuts, low interest rates, military spending. Periodic jolts of stimulus, continuously stronger and stronger. And any of you who lived through the 80s, we all saw this in somebody that we knew, right? Just a little more cocaine, just a little more cocaine, just a little more cocaine, just another day without sleep. And then what happens? After 2 or 3 days of no sleep, they just crash and burn. They melt down, they freak out, they go nuts, or they just sleep for 2 days. And that's how Trump is running our economy right now. That's how the Republicans are running our economy right now. And then on top of that, they've got this new plan. By the way, we have a winner in our free CBD oil giveaway. Our winner is in Iowa, did you say? Idaho. That's cool. I'm not going to name them on the air, but congratulations. And so this is from New Leaf Naturals, one of our new sponsors. In any case, this is the scam that they're running. And now that we've got 10 years of taxes, of Trump's tax information from the 80s and the early 90s, we know that he lost more money than any other wealthy person in America. He bought an airline, it went bankrupt. He bought a vodka company, it went bankrupt. He started a university, or he started a school back then, another school, it went bankrupt. He started, pretty much everything he did. Casinos, they went bankrupt or out of business. He literally lost, in today's dollars, about $2 billion. Now, I don't think that back in the 90s he had $2 billion. And I think that he's borrowed all that money to keep his lifestyle going. I think that the reason why Donald Trump is hiding his tax returns, the reason why he told Mitch McConnell it was a higher priority to put his guy in as the chief counsel, the lawyer for the Internal Revenue Service, that was a higher priority than getting the Attorney General of the United States in, was because he knew that this guy would protect his tax returns. It's why he put a crony in as commissioner of the IRS, a guy who used to work for Trump. He would protect his tax returns. Well, what is in his tax returns? And I ask you this question. What do you think is in Trump's tax returns that he is hiding so aggressively? What is he hiding? And what are all these Republicans working to help him hide? I personally think it's the fact that he's broke. I also think it's that he has been so broke that he's been willing to get into, and basically I don't think this is driven by being broke. I think he started life this way. I think this is a business practice he inherited from his father. But I think the other thing is that he's perfectly willing to launder money for some of the most evil people in the world. These oligarchs who ripped off, in '83 was one of his first big money laundering schemes for Papa Doc Duvalier, who hid his money in Trump Tower, bought real estate in Trump Tower, to money stolen out of Haiti. So, the Democrats in Congress, they're looking at it going, hey, this guy's committing crimes. He's been doing money laundering for, 40 years now? And, yeah, I get that. But I think the thing that he's desperately tried to hide is the fact that in '87, when he wrote The Art of the, or when Tony, wrote The Art of the Deal, and Donald Trump published it, he was 2 years into losing literally hundreds of millions or $100 million a year. He was broke. But he needed to revive himself as the captain of industry, as this great guy who understands how things work. And so he hired this ghostwriter, and he published The Art of the Deal, and everybody was like, whoa, this guy is cool. He's really a big shot. And he continues losing $100 million a year for the next 8 years. And we don't know how much he's lost since then because we only have his tax returns up to the mid-90s. And I think this is why he's trying to hide his tax returns. I think Ivanka is broke. Kushner is obviously living on borrowed money. He went over to the Middle East to borrow $1 billion to prop up his 666 Fifth Avenue building. And the Qatar government, which is the largest investor in this huge wealth fund, turned him down. And immediately you had Qatar being blockaded by Saudi Arabia, by Mohammed bin Salman, Jared Kushner's buddy. And the blockade continued until they finally said, okay, cool, we'll give Kushner $1 billion. They gave him $1 billion, and within a week, the blockade was gone. In my opinion, that's probably the most egregious and obvious crime that this administration has committed. But it's just an example of the kinds of things that we will find out about. Now, we won't find out about that because that's Kushner, and we need to see Kushner's tax returns too. But this is the kind of thing that we're going to find out when we look at Trump's tax returns, in my opinion, is that he's broke. Kushner's broke. They're all underwater. The whole Trump crime family, they are grifters. They are living large on interest, on money that they have borrowed that they're skimming off the top of. And what little cash flow they've got from the so-called legitimate properties that are there and that grew and that continue to survive as a consequence of money laundering operations. This guy is a criminal. And he's running our economy this way now. He wants Jay Powell, the chairman of the Fed, to lower interest rates a whole point. They lower interest rates in hundredths of points. They're called basis points. Now we're going to drop interest rates 20 basis points. That's 21/100%. Trump says, drop it 1%. Right? Because he's a grifter. He understands financial crime. If he can get the Fed, and he's got the Fed doing it. I mean, they haven't lowered interest rates, but they stopped raising them. Because he knows that during a good economy, presidents who are up for re-election tend to get re-elected. And during a bad economy, presidents who are up for re-election tend to get kicked out.